Hello, folks. Welcome to another edition of the Dr. Mark Foster Show. This is a relatively unanticipated program. It's a result of having just had a kind of spiritual experience of sorts, perhaps. I suppose it could be my imagination, but I'll share it with you anyway. For those of you who have read my material or listened to my previous broadcasts, you know that I am autistic. Also, a few years ago, I discovered empathy for the first time. And one of the ways in which that experience of empathy was demonstrated to me was through a being whom I believe to be my guardian angel, who was a 17th century Sufi from the Punjab region of what is now India and Pakistan, named Hadrat Sultan Bahu. Later on, a couple of years ago, on a 4-day weekend, or perhaps a 3-day weekend, I was reflecting on various issues, including how best to present my religion, the Baha'i faith, to the public, my own personal teaching efforts, and I was especially thinking about a particular website that I had developed, and I was wondering whether that website was good the way it was at the time, or perhaps whether I should change it. And ultimately I decided to change it. But the interesting thing was, to me, was that over the course of that weekend, that extended weekend, I saw a series of flashes of white light. And during that time, I entirely reevaluated my approach, not only to the Baha'i faith, but also to sociology. I went back to Roy Bhaskar's critical realism. I had abandoned it, become a nominalist for 8 years, recognized that there was a reason for it, for my becoming a nominalist, which was mostly a personal issue, a conflict that I had with a particular individual, and I simply did not want to be associated with that person. And so, as a way of distancing myself from that individual, I simply rejected everything that I had held near to my heart for my entire Baha'i life, especially the approach to the Baha'i faith that was developed by the late Marion Christ Lippett and the late Henry A. Weil, as their views were communicated to me, especially by my late spiritual mother, Elizabeth Thomas. And I realized I made a mistake. Now, as with any people, there's areas where I don't entirely agree with any of them. That's just a part of our human journey. We are never going to agree completely with any other human being unless we're entirely gullible. If we are thinking people, we will come up with our own ways of understanding the world, our own ways of making sense out of our experiences. So my views are not exactly the same as any of those three individuals. even though I regard all three of them as being members of my spiritual family, and I see them or feel them around me much of the time, and especially one of them, Henry Weil. When I think of him, I see a smiling face in my head. That's all, just a smiling face. The image of him smiling at me. Very bright face. Much younger, actually, than I remember him when I knew him. Very beautiful personality, wonderful soul, wonderful servant of God and Baha'u'llah. Very good example, I think, to all of us to look at the accomplishments of the late Henry Weil, what he wrote, and to take in and benefit from his perspective on the Baha'i faith. So I see him. I also feel my spiritual mother, Elizabeth Thomas, and also Marion Lippett, and my departed parents, and a variety of other individuals. So not only my guardian angel, but all these other people that are in my spiritual family as I feel they are. And that's what is kind of novel to me, the fact that I feel that they are. It's not just something that I think. I used to regard myself as a very cerebral person, and I still am cerebral. That is one dimension of my personality. I can appear that way, especially when I am lecturing to my college students. That's pretty much what they see of me. Perhaps if they go into my office and chat with me, they'll see another more, hopefully warmer side, maybe, I'm not sure, chatting with me in my office. But, I present a very serious persona when I'm lecturing, trying to present the materials in as best of a way that I can to hopefully have the information be of benefit to my students, on the information that I can give them on sociology. But regardless, I am not the same person that I was a few years ago. I can feel my spiritual family. I have empathy for people. I never understood what empathy was. Perhaps like many other autistics, I had confused empathy with sympathy. I thought they were the same. At least for me, I now realize that they are not the same. Sympathy or compassion is, like altruism, a kind of mental process. How can I think about somebody in a more concerned way? It's very rational. Has some emotional aspect to it, but I think it's more rational than emotional. Empathy, on the other hand, is almost entirely emotional. One of the major reasons, perhaps, why there is such a high rate of atheism among autistics, and there is, that's been empirically studied, atheism, agnosticism, skepticism, and so forth. Very high rate of those philosophies among autistics. Again, one of the reasons for that, I think, is the lack of empathy. If a person cannot experience empathy with another human soul, then how is a person going to feel the presence of the Creator, or the presence of the Prophet, or the presence of any spiritual figure? As a result, atheism and similar perspectives, I think, become like a path of least resistance. They are easy philosophies for autistics. Buddhism, which is, for the most part, a non-theistic religion. There certainly are gods, but they're not looked at in exactly what we would call in the Western world theistically. In other words, they're not worshipped in precisely the same way. So it may be an issue of terminology, but generally speaking, most forms of Buddhism, with some exceptions like Wan Buddhism, are generally looked at as being non-theistic, maybe better than atheistic, but non-theistic in the sense that God is not the center of that particular belief system. Pardon me. There are a lot of autistics who are Buddhists. That's an anecdotal statement. I don't know if my experiences are typical. I suspect they are. It's just been so overwhelming. I mean, I've just met so many autistics who are Buddhists. That appears to be such a common type of religious expression in the online autistic community. And so I think that those two things are related. The difficulty with empathy, but perhaps somewhat of a greater ease with compassion. And of course, compassion is a central tenet or doctrine in Buddhism. Sometimes Buddhism has been called the path of compassion. Now, let me get to why I decided to record this program. About 45 minutes ago, and as I'm speaking, it is now 11:23 p.m. on Tuesday, April 2nd, 2013. I had another experience of flashing light, and I wrote about it. I will go ahead and just read you my experience. In the late evening of April 2nd, 2013, I was laying on my back. I saw with my eyes open what I feel was a confirmatory flash of light from my guardian angel or another member of my spiritual family. I was reflecting on the idea that in the wake of Earth changes, or even while they occur, certain nations concerned for their survival might attempt to plunder the spoils of a chaotic global environment. Even now, various military agencies and governments, aware of imminent Earth changes, might be prepositioning their assets, especially near the two Koreas and in the Middle East. Cyber warfare or cyber terrorism could also be a factor in the equation. Even relatively weak countries might obtain some resources through asymmetrical warfare. As a definition, asymmetrical or asymmetric warfare is a term which includes guerrilla warfare. It also includes what is commonly called terrorism, such as hijackings, suicide bombings, and so forth. basic idea of asymmetric warfare is that even if the level of assets on various sides in a conflict are unbalanced, in other words, asymmetrical, the side or sides with relatively few assets could end up winning the war. That has been true with the United States. The first one that comes to mind is the Vietnam War, which was a war that clearly, I think, the United States lost. And yet Vietnam had a very, compared to the United States, a very weak military. Similarly, the war in Afghanistan. That war has been going on for years, more than a decade. And yet, it still has not been won. Still, the Taliban, which is an Persian Arabic word for students, the Taliban are still in control of many tribal areas. Hamid Karzai, the president of Afghanistan, is popularly and I guess jokingly referred to sometimes as the mayor of Kabul, the capital city. Once you leave Kabul, Hamid Karzai's power is very, very minimal. So, after these coming earth changes, which I feel, and this is just a feeling, it's not based on anything else, which I feel are very, very close. Very, very close. I don't know how close. I'm not going to give a date. I think that's foolish. It's just a feeling. It's not any kind of an informational kind of thing, or like a God forbid channeling, which is simply imagination anyway. It's not any kind of specific information that I was given. It's purely a feeling that, and the fact that when I was contemplating this idea, that I had another one of these visionary lightning bolts, which I have had before. I have not had them that frequently. So this is not something that happens to me every day. I usually don't get them when I meditate. It's very, very rare. So, personally, and obviously, all I'm doing is conveying a subjective experience. I hope that you don't take it for more than that. Personally, I feel that that's pretty close. That we are on the verge of what I have called the great unraveling, the wrapping up of the present world order. Baha'u'llah wrote, "The world's equilibrium hath been upset through the vibrating influence of this most great, this new world order. Mankind's ordered life hath been revolutionized through the agency of this unique, this wondrous system, the like of which mortal eyes have never witnessed." That is from Baha'u'llah's most holy book, or in Arabic, the Kitab Aqdas, Persianized Arabic, actually. And so that's all it is, a feeling. And I figured I would get on and make that recording, and after I do this, I'm going to convert it into a flash file so I can upload it to YouTube. If you have any comments, please feel free to do so. I would encourage people to leave comments. I would like your feedback. I would like to hear what you think. I only ask that you be polite and considerate. Please don't attack. That's not where I am. I don't get into. If somebody attacks me, I don't respond. Simply, I don't respond to attacks at all. So please don't attack. Please be considerate and polite. And if you like, I can engage in a conversation with you. On YouTube. So I'm certainly, I check my messages typically every day or every other day. So until next time, this is Dr. Mark Foster. Have a good one.